Mr. H here. I just wanted to tell you all I've had a very long hiatus, and I'll have a few more weeks hiatus beyond this. Yes, I suffered a death in the family, and I had to take off. Very sad. But I shall be back, don't worry. In the meantime, I had an odd dream, and from it I wrote this story. Unconventional for this channel as it is, but perhaps not totally. See if you enjoy it. It's probably my biggest one so far, my longest. Anyway, toodaloo until next time we meet on this channel. His name, Lark Dove, 19. An ordinary young man on the cusp of adulthood. Lark Dove, more than most anyone else, understands the fragile nature of this fabric upon which we dance. This fabric called reality. You see, he is employed through his own free will at the imperative of higher powers to find and repair disruptions and destructions across the very warp and woof of the weave comprising this world. Location, Manhattan, New York, USA. Date, April 2019. The universe is a complex and bizarre organization. The human isn't supposed to worry about all that fuss and nonsense. We are here to simply be humans. Our inheritance is the Earth itself, not the workings of the entire universe. Others do that hefty work, as they should. As they should. However, sometimes additional assistance is required, for whatever reason, and the agents of the unknown are sometimes singular, sometimes mundane. Regardless, the task is fascinating and unusual. And so you shall discover, XJ7, as you partake of the retelling of these events from recent history. Central Manhattan, like most all of that island extreme, has plenty of warehouses and productive supply companies shuffling about with constantly industrious undertakings. This particular business I shall draw your attention to, a name withheld for legal reasons, was indeed huge and complex. Into one of the large and lofty freight elevators slid a slim figure, a young man of only 19. Indeed, Lark Dove, our subject. The encasement was empty, however. As the door shut, another youthful figure, a young woman, slithered in behind Lark. At first, he didn't notice her hourglass form from behind him. Mr. Dove took his small satchel from his shoulder and unzipped it to reveal a hoop. It was a slight piece of kit with a screw on one side and some faintly raised buttons around the perimeter. It would appear to those in the know as an embroidery hoop, nothing more. Oh, how foolish the mind when the eye and brain conspire to create understanding. Lark Dove fiddled with his hoop when the lift groaned and shifted. The box began to slide sideways a little, going askew, tilting. Something snapped outside the roof of the car. Grinding metal filled the elevator as it strained against outer rails and various guides. The fresh-faced woman gripped a well-worn metal handrail and screamed in panic as her legs slipped from beneath her. Lark turned in astonishment to see his fellow passenger he had not regarded until this moment, and then a metallic ping sending high-frequency horror into the conveyance. And it fell. The plummet would be several stories, ending their lives in the basement as the car would undoubtedly crack open and scatter down the giant shaft housing other elevators. 2 lives would have been ended if Lark Dove wasn't an agent of rearrangement sent from beyond. A flick of his finger, a button depressed on the side of his hoop, and young Mr. Dove froze time. Another button depressed, and a lithe and lovely form appeared in the time-choked locality. The second figure was only slightly older and slightly taller than young Mr. Dove, and it was a slightly more feminine figure as well. A finely chiseled woman in white leather, with jacket and trousers framing a colorful open-collar paw t-shirt. Her head, crowning the glory of her unusual figure, was clear-eyed and fresh-faced, with high-piled white hair in a pixie cut, closely cropped to the sides of her skull. Herge was relieved at their sight, as he always was. "I'm here," she burst out to assuage his fear. "Where's the work to be done?" The Dove quickly spread out his hoop, pulling it until it widened out at expansion joints to form a circle perhaps 18 inches wide. Pushing another button, the front of that hoop filled with an image of darkness, intersected by various glistening threads. As Mr. Dove moved the device around, he could see an abstract version of reality displayed as threads and grids of woven silken lines. By turning the screw, Dove could attune the complexity and distance of the imaging. He plodded about the frozen environment, scanning, examining, and then excitedly beckoning the visitor. "Lark," he addressed her, "over here." She came forward, producing a pair of shining knitting hooks from behind her. They were pushed into a couple of small balls of brightly colored yarn hanging from her belt. Her face peered into the blackness of the hoop, moving ever closer until she was inside the hoop and looking around. On the opposite side of the hoop, in reality, there was no evidence of her flesh in our world. Lark was entering another dimension of existence. "I see it," she affirmed. "Let me get closer." They walked to a wall where Lark leaned in and pulled her hooks to catch silvery strands of ethereal material. She spent several minutes pulling, twisting, knotting, elongating, and strengthening the connections of several cables around them. Outside the loosened lift. "This isn't preternatural," Lark told Dove. "It isn't demonic. It isn't supernatural." "What do you mean?" Dove worried at the revelation. "This is everyday sabotage done by a human hand." "Why were we sent to deal with this? It's outside our reach. But it was our assignment, wasn't it?" "It must be," Dove agreed. "This is where I was sent. No one said why, just where." "Fair enough." Lark completed her tasks and stood back. "Oh, one more thing. I need to sling an entropy thread to negate the crushing effects of gravity. Otherwise, you and that girl will have broken legs when you rejoin normal space-time." Inside the hoop, Lark's glowing hooks gripped the thread and twined it to the edge of the elevator's carriage. "Done," Lark declared. Dove switched off the hoop, slid it together, and packed it away into his shoulder bag. Before he zipped up the device completely, he hit another button and the elevator regained real-time momentum. Everything jumped, cranked, and squealed as the lift lurched to a standstill. The lights flickered. The woman in the lift stopped screaming, looked at young Dove, and tears began welling in her eyes. She cried out in horror, ran to the young man and flung herself around him, hugging him so tight as to restrain him as she buried her face in his slender chest. Lark backed up in fear, aware she was late to depart the scene before her presence would be noted. Her radiantly sentient eyes connected with Dove. A nod, a quick hand gesture, and she was translated to some far-off place only she knows. "I almost died," the young lady sobbed. "I thought we were dead." Workers were prying open the metal doors from the floor they were nearest. Dove followed their hasty and panicked hand gestures to deposit the girl in their waiting hands. Her blonde hair faded below their shoulders, and she was swallowed up into a small sea of humanity, working to discover what happened to the malfunctioning elevator. Dove was able to get out without the help of others. He wrinkled up into his shoulders and shifted through the crowd to disappear into the streets of that metropolis and vanish from the scene of his assigned deed. Then he ran. He ran as fast as his lean body would go. The black jacket and pants made him a shadow flowing through the river of people, milling about their daily routines. Soon, Dove was able to figure out his surroundings and get into the subway, where he waited for a train to arrive and travel elsewhere. Inside the train car, seated with a few other ordinary humans about, waiting for the departure bell, Dove was crossed by a familiar figure. Another dark-clad young man in a three-piece chalk-striped suit, donning a bowler. The lad's trimmed hair was tucked up under the unusual topper. Kerke took note of the white shirt, the electric blue tie and socks, the black leather shoes. The entire package was envious and stylish in a buffoonish way, due to the hat.
The bowler,
Herke Dove told the affable fellow parking next to him.
It doesn't work. It's beyond passé, and a British symbol of class.
Nonsense! The arrival spit out in an outrageous lisp. My attire hath nothing to do with your incompetence. Let's stay on point, boy. You missed the goal of your last mission.
What?
Dove exclaimed. Yes, the supervisory figure chided. Disgraceful. But worry not, young Dove. Mistakes aren't forbidden. We aren't some crackpot tyranny or something. You merely missed your mark. Keep your mind on your work, not on my attire. Dove hadn't even noticed that the train had begun moving and was now pulling into the next station down the track. Regardless, young Dove, the supervisor told him, one mistake should not negate another. Here is your second chance. Good luck. The supervisor stood up and walked off as the doors opened. From beyond the fleeting form of the bowler-bedecked boffin was the sad and soppy figure of the young woman from the elevator. Her eyes instantly recognized the young man seated before her. She lunged to Dove in fevered excitement and gripped him tight. "It's you!" she bellowed, tears flowing again. "I thought I'd never see you again. Are you all right? Where'd you go?"
I was,
Dove stammered, abashed to be so intimate with a buxom woman of his general age. "What's your name?" she asked. "We nearly died together. The cables were trashed, and we should have dropped to our death. The supervisor and lead engineer were so pissed. My name's Beth. I really thought we were going to die. I was so frightened that all I see is you before me, and I don't know. I just don't know what to do. Are you single? My name's Beth. Beth Page, Page. I'm 21. I live in the city. My roommate is cool. She'd love to meet you. Are you free?"
Dove,
Herke told Beth, lifting a cordial hand to allow an introductory shake.
Herke Dove.
She shook his hand quickly and continued hugging him. "Oh, my God!" she cried aloud. "Glad to meet you, Herke Dove." And with that, she eased back and composed herself into an awkward bubble of silence that developed and stretched onward for a minute or two. Herke wasn't sure what to do until something was triggered from within him. "You," Dove told Beth. "Let me check something out." Beth merely smiled and observed the handsome young man before her. Dove took off his shoulder satchel and zipped it to produce his hoop. Soon he was positioning it between them and looking her over through his singular device. "Oh," Beth realized, "you're in textiles. I bet you're a designer. Do you do embroidery? Cool detail work or something like that? I never learned needlework or needlepoint or knitting or such. I was too practical and mathematical. I went into office work after high school. I work in the offices back there. Just a working girl doing file flipping and word processing, etc. But I always admire your sorts. You artistes, you are fascinating and so creative. I just don't have that inside of me."
"No,"
Dove agreed.
"You won't have anything creative inside of you if you don't take care of a cancerous induction woven into your uterus."
"What?" Beth asked, startled, but finding young Dove perhaps creepy, yet perhaps a macabre joker. Dove pushed another button on his hoop. Lark walked into Beth's view from down the train. The office girl looked up at the stunning image of Lark, a sense of dread and defeat shadowing her poor mind and crushing her hopes.
"Hello, Dove,"
Lark greeted, leaning into the youthful cohort.
"What's this? Are you Dove's girlfriend?"
Beth blurted out without a moment's hesitation. Dove and Lark looked blankly at Beth for a span.
"Why would I be?"
queried Lark, quickly returning to the image inside Dove's hoop. Beth sighed in relief as love blossomed again.
"Sweet Dove,"
Lark smiled at the sight.
"You have a new friend. That's so nice."
She wasn't patronizing, merely honest, because inside the hoop, she and Dove could see Beth's inner forms. Her outer forms were highlighted by scant silvery threads, but her heart and major arteries were alive with light and silken girth, displaying her health. From her red-embroidered heart were stretching threads, one after another, reaching out and conjoining to Dove's heart. Dove nervously looked to his aid.
"I'm not doing anything,"
Dove told Lark.
"No," Lark agreed. "But this is. Look down there. Is that our target?"
"Yes," Dove regained professional demeanor.
"Note the darkened threads coming in from beyond, strangling and infecting." "Cancerous," Lark told.
"Yes," Dove agreed.
"And most likely a very dark curse from someone far off." "Easy work," Lark told her hoop holder. "Only a minute's toil. It's fairly fresh work. It isn't deeply intertwined into her body yet."
Beth merely watched the two, incredulous over what they were saying and unable to comprehend their intent. As Lark began working with her hooks, a rider across from the trio began laughing loudly. The man observing Lark's work found it a lark indeed. "Ha ha!" the man heckled the striking young woman. "That's hilarious! Ha ha! I never saw such a lame little air drum routine. Ha ha! It's like these tiny little drum movements. You do it all wrong, lady. You get funky." Dove and Lark glanced to each other in confusion, then looked at the weird fellow traveler. An index finger twitched and hit a switch on the loop. Lark, Dove, and Beth were frozen in time to do what they were meant to do. Inside the train, in real time, the three had disappeared in an instant. The laughing man screamed in horror like a little girl and climbed up the wall of the rushing train. It was as if he'd seen a group of ghosts or something. Within frozen reality, Lark pulled and pushed threads about inside of Beth's uterus through the hoop. Working in the threads of ethereal matter was second nature to this woman. She had seen and repaired these types of incidents thousands of times before.
"We're odd ones, Beth,"
Dove told the infatuated woman before him.
"Lark and I work outside of common time. We're committed willingly, but we're also recruited in full knowledge that we would agree to this beneficent effort. You weren't ever supposed to know what we were doing. I'm just not quite polished in this work yet."
"Okay." Beth had no idea what he was talking about, but he seemed so nice.
"It's a curse,"
Lark told Beth.
"Not our work. What is going on with you? I'm trying to extricate your spiritual body from uterine cancer. Be glad that we're here. We don't get around to everyone with disease or other problems, but we do what we can."
And with that, Lark yanked a hook hard and quick to snap a dark red thread in the beyond of that hoop. The remnant of that motion withdrew and dissolved in the inky underworld. The spectral images of Beth's womb turned bright white and glowed with vigor and health once more. "Ah!" Beth squeaked as the thread was disconnected from her.
"Oh my God, I felt that. I feel good. The pain, it's gone."
"Good." Dove was relieved.
Job well done.
Suddenly jerking back, Dove pushed away his hoop and turned it as a large and meaty hand stabbed at his face. Black claw-like nails on the fingers were pointed into a lethal form of a spear aimed at the bridge of Dove's nose. Dove's reflexes were excellently swift, turning the arm away from everyone, making the attack useless. However, the hand continued to push outward, widening the hoop until a head and shoulders could move through from the dark side of the hoop into the frozen world inhabited by Lark, Dove, and Beth. Dove dropped the hoop to the ground as the demonic figure pushed and wiggled to come through into the frozen subway car. Lark grabbed Beth and pulled her down through the car to one of the end doors. The red demon followed them, stalking them until Lark could grab Beth around the shoulders, wave a hand, and translate both of them from the train car. Angered, befuddled, the demon swiveled to find his prey. Looking up and down the length of the car, it could only see frozen humans. Helpless, disgusting people, but not within the creature's legitimate area of operation. It scanned its eyes with determination, overlooking the hoop on the floor of the train. With a swift move, the demon catapulted itself through the wall of the car and into the distance as its form dematerialized into threads and dust. If it had been more attentive, perhaps clever, it would have noticed several fingers clinging to the edge of the hoop. Inside the hoop, in the dark and ethereal dimension, clung Dove as he held on for life, dangling. One moment of frailty, and he would fall forever into the nether realm only he could access. With determined effort, the young man pulled himself up and out of the hoop, and into the train car once more, then turned off his device and stowed it, to leave through an end door and go out in the massive city, where he would restart himself into real time. Following images presented on the portal, Dove obeyed the scant instructions given from afar to guide him to another destination where his skill would be needed. It took a while to get on and off trains and out into the far yonder of the forests in upstate New York, near the slight mountains where few call wilderness home. Finally, young Mr. Dove found his way into a lumber warehouse left derelict for several months. It wasn't a typical location for his type of work. He was familiar with people and the pitfalls of humanity in conjunction with the supernatural. This place was bereft of humanity. It was merely dusty and dismal. Who, thought young Dove, who could be here for me to salvage from deleterious effect? On cue, as was always the case, Dove's thoughts were answered by reality crashing into his pondering. A terrific thudding and crashing broke a door from an outer wall, followed by a horrific bellowing of massive lungs and a hairy figure shambling at inhuman speed toward the diminutive human. Dove was ready. He had the hoop in his hands, pushing a button to halt time again. And again, it was just soon enough. The Neanderthal creature was reaching out in a fit of rage. All muscles of the 10-foot form focused their strength and fury through burning eyes of the primal humanoid, desiring to decimate the young Dove. Another button was pushed on his hoop, and on cue came Lark, in from elsewhere. The lanky cohort brought Beth Page with her. You still have Beth? Dove asked. As a mortal, a human, this is your world and your time, Lark plainly explained. You must traverse the slow route, thoroughly seeking out the crags and corners of reality. I'm not a part of your inheritance. I take the fast route outside of time when I desire. You'll be an aged man when I'm a few years older, Dove. Yet you'll live a life longer and fuller than mine shall ever be. What? Miss Page exclaimed.
Where are we? How long was I gone? What's that ugly thing?
She pointed to the beastly intruder.
We're in the woods upstate, Dove told. It's about 8 hours since we were in the subway car,
Lark explained.
And this looks like Bigfoot, Dove continued. Sasquatch, the man of the woods. Skunk ape, or something similar. Nephilim, Lark succinctly said. Arakim, precisely. It's a hybrid anomaly. It's my next mission, Dove concluded.
A quick glance from Lark made him correct his words.
It's our mission. Here.
Using the hoop, Dove quickly saw an aberration within the brute. Across the divide of this faceted world was the image of an intricately woven heart made baroque, a near rococo, by detail and complexity of intertwining artistic threads.
Beautiful work,
Dove commented as he admired the craft of the flesh.
The creator indeed has unbelievable charm in his works. And look here.
Lark pointed with one of her needles.
Expertly torn in the center by a claw, staining and rotting the essence of this entity.
Among the myriad strings creating the heart of the Sasquatch was a surgeon-like tear, turning white silk to brown filth, tainted red by cursed blood. Lark's work began immediately, while Paige and Dove stared in amazement at her amazing task completed with surefire confidence. Paige could sometimes divert her gaze into the inky blackness of the great beyond, where furtive, fleeting figures would sometimes flit and flutter. It was a sight that bedazzled her human mind.
Done,
Lark said aloud, leaning back. The heart was returning to pure white with gentle silver reflection. Dove restarted time again. The Bigfoot immediately relaxed, eyes drained of hatred, arms easing, body line releasing all pent anger. It merely caught its breath and stared at the 3 human figures before him. It held out a hand for Larks to meet and hold. She did! The primitive man guided her out of the warehouse, through a small span of woods and back to a road before leaving the threesome alone to find their way back to civilization.
What was that about?
Paige asked.
What did I just see? Lark just made a friend.
Dove teased his comrade. Lark ignored the comment.
Ours is not to question why,
Lark told the woman.
Ours is but to do or die.
Dove snarked. Lark put her hands on the shoulders of her 2 companions. In an instant, their surroundings changed. All 3 were on a train car in the city.
Wow!
Beth exclaimed at the spatial jump.
Lark, Dove asked, is that something you're allowed to do? Novel travel of others is outside the rules. Maybe, Lark replied, but we have to write our friend. We can't deposit Beth outside the area we found her. Let the big boys come down on me. I'll defend my decision.
Wait! Screamed Beth as she rushed at Dove, grabbing him tightly.
Don't leave me! It's okay, Beth. I won't,
Dove told her, causing her to relax. Between them was Dove's hoop, now active by an accidental push of the button, launching the portal's properties. Dove could see her heart was lashing out hundreds of tender threads to entwine his heart. And then one came from his and approached Beth's needy ticker. Just before Dove's thread could connect, a claw slashed out from the darkness and severed all the threads betwixt the 2 previously caught in that escaped elevator. Its black nails tore asunder all of Beth's affections and swiped away Dove's budding appeal for the woman. The 2 were forced apart from the shock, the hoop dropping to the floor. As it hit the ground, the face of the bellicose demon appeared ready to emerge into the train car, but, landing on a fortuitous button, the hoop turned off the portal, and the demon was trapped in the ethereal domain. Dove's saddened eyes slowly rose to meet Paige's own. Now dead, cut off from any previous love she had fostered for the young man before her.
I should go now,
Paige coldly said, all movements lacking verve and luster. Lark and Dove merely watched in helpless silence as Paige vanished into the crowd. Forever. A little while later, Lark and Dove sauntered into the middle of a nearly empty car on the subway. Dove wasn't at ease, but he collected himself enough to go forward with their next routine action. Shoving his hands into the outer wall of the car, Dove opened a clandestine passageway, sliding left and right into the stainless steel walls. Once through, the doors closed, sealed, and vanished. Lark and Dove were now in a pristine train car on another line in another aspect of reality. Light from outside showed an inhuman city, an unearthly domain. The pair disrobed completely, Dove bundling all items aside from his hoop and placing them on a seat in the empty train speeding along in another world. Lark did likewise, but she held on to the clothes in her arms.
Lark, Dove plainly told her, you can't take them with you. They'll be destroyed.
I don't care, she replied, equally emotionless.
I love them, and they were mine. Maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe I can take them with us.
Shoulder to shoulder, waiting for a door to open as the train slowed, Dark stared up into Lark's profile and smiled at her warmly. He felt closer to the woman, now that she was becoming more human in her frailty. Did his experience change her in some small way, he wondered.
I admire you, Carol,
Dove revealed.
You are amazing.
Thank you, Dove. Lark gently smiled, looking to him.
Your flattery is so sweet, like you. But I have no need for your pity, your reverence, your adoration, or praise. I'm unlike you, young Dove, and you should be respectful of that divide.
He held up the hoop for her to see what was happening. Through her perspective, she could see his enlarged heart swelling with beautiful embroidery, sending out a single, supple strand, approaching Lark's own heart. Dove flipped the hoop to watch it come within inches of her majestically formed heart, appearing to be made out of crystalline silk. Moments before Dove could connect to her, a ring of intricate needlework wove a circle around Lark's heart, catching Dove's single thread, halting it, and allowing it to tether, but never to connect to its target. Looking above the hoop, Dove saw Lark's face turn toward him. A lone tear rolled from one of her beautiful eyes and created a moist trail down to her chin. The doors opened, taming their attention to a higher imperative. Through the doors was another unusual sight altogether, stretching into infinity through endless white marble stairs and swaying fields of delicately clad humanoids, singing a choral hymn to a light far above them. Stepping through that entryway, Lark's stylish clothes were whisked away from her arms, as if dust in the wind. Their naked bodies were regaled instantly in long blue choir robes bedecked with silver and gold detail, intertwining across their construction to reflect the light from above. Dove smiled heartily, a sense of triumph and love within him. If one could see through the hoop once more, they would notice threads coming and going into the hearts of the duo and reaching upwards, elevating them into the air. And yet a single sinew would be seen emerging from Lark and searching frantically for Dove's heart. Like and subscribe before I die, and ring the little bell or you will surely go to hell.
Oh, we're telling spooky stories. This is not a spooky story. Oh, there's no way on the top I can
it
say.
depends how you look at it. It is kind of spooky.
I guess so.
Wait, that's it? That's the end of the story?
Is it?